You're watching the Fantasy Rankings Report only on Fantasy Now Plus. Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rankings Report. My name is Topher Kurt, but you can call me Topher, and I am here with my co-host, Michael Flores. Michael, how are you doing today?
Hey, you know what? It's a great week for you to be back. The Bears are in first place. The Packers are not. I am doing well. Even if it only lasts for a week, I'm here for it.
Yeah, so what you are experiencing right now is what we call normalcy in Green Bay land. So you know what? Sometimes it feels really good, especially with the holiday season coming up, to just give a little bit to those that are in need, to give a little bump up to just a team that needs it a little bit.
I don't know what normalcy is, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it at least for a week.
Well, you do that. Fun fact, have you heard about the whole 27-year-old thing with Aaron Rodgers and Favre and Jordan Love?
I have not actually.
Okay, so Brett Favre, when he won his first Super Bowl, he was 27. Aaron Rodgers, 27. Guess how old Jordan Love is?
He may be 27, but buddy Jordan Love is no
Hold on.
Favre, no
Hold
Rodgers.
on. Hold on. Because what else have the Packers have happened that happened in that 2009, 2010 to 11 season where they won the last Super Bowl? Oh, their tight end that was breaking out all of a sudden went out with injury for the full season. Also, the Packers have 6 wins this season. 5 of them have been where they score 27 points. 5 of 6 of their wins, they have scored exactly 27 points.
Sold your soul to the devil.
Yes. Well, if we get a Super Bowl out of it this year, I'll gladly take it, because the last time you can talk about having a Super Bowl, neither of us were born.
I was definitely not. I have yet to see one.
Yes. Also, all 3 of my dogs decided that it was time to come in and be in the podcasting room during it. So, if you hear some tippy tappies because we have hardwood floors, or some growls or grunts, it's not me because I'm an old man with my back. That is my dogs being dogs. I do want to bring up that the show is brought to you by Fantasy Now Plus and the Finns Talk Sports Network. You should subscribe to both channels. The links are below in the description. You get to see rankings by both of us, which makes sense because we're the Fantasy Rankings Report. We have 8 shows a week with Fantasy Now Plus. Big things continually going. Also, we're partnered with Underdog Fantasy, which is pretty legit. You pay $5 and get $100 in bonus funds by using the promo code FN Plus. Again, FNPLUS. For those of you that don't know how to spell plus, I'm primarily talking to my brothers. I know they're not listening, but I'm talking to my brothers. Let's start off with our first segment, Michael.
Absolutely. Just like we start off every episode, we're going with the ranking question of the day. In this segment, Topher and I will ask each other questions about rankings in any way, shape, form. We can stick to our area of expertise or just talk about another position. This week, I'm going to go with wide receivers and running backs, and it's going to be more of a would you rather. So for the rest of the season, who would you rather have? Now, my first 2 that I'm going to go with, would you rather have DJ Moore or Tez Johnson?
Oh, Tez Johnson, easy. Not even a question. Tez Johnson has outscored him in touchdowns. DJ Moore had this fantastic streak of having at least 3 receptions in a game, and then 2 weeks ago had a total dud. And it's just not what it was. Also, Jamie Perogue, hey, you sexy beast. Hey, you spelled everything correct. So good job. I'm proud of you. Okay. Hi, buddy. But yeah, I'm going Tez. What about you?
Yeah, honestly, the way things are shaking out right now, DJ Moore either is just frustrated or something. I don't know what's going on. He can't catch the balls that are getting thrown to him, or he's just not really getting too many targets.
No.
And yeah, I would take Tez. That first one, I kind of wanted it to be a little bit of softball. The next couple are going to be
Oh,
slightly closer to each other right now.
okay.
So right now, for the next one, we got Jalen Waddle or Tedero McMillan.
Oh, I like this question. I really like Jalen Waddle. He's been producing at least, I want to say 80 plus yards a game since since Tyreek Hill has gone out. And Teteroa just had his biggest game of his career. Now, we do need to remind ourselves of how good rookie wide receivers get in the second half of the season, something I've said for all of this year. Watch out for the second half of the season because they will explode. Teteroa McMillan is a prime candidate to continue his route of explosion, especially with the Carolina Panthers having a winning record right now. Like, no, that's uncomfortable for the entire league because that doesn't happen, you know. That'd be like, I don't know, the Las Vegas Raiders, being good. That doesn't happen. So, I'm going Teteroa because I think his ceiling's higher because we know that Miami's going to run their offense through Devon Achane more because they're showing less and less trust in Tua, which makes sense. Bryce Young is starting to get some steam. I'm going Tet. What about yourself, Michael?
Same. And a big part of it is that game that he did just come off of. I don't know which Dolphins you're going to see week after week. You're either going to
Yes.
get this high-powered offense that is going to destroy teams like Buffalo, or not even put up any points. It's a little ridiculous. But
Yes.
I do like McMillan, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous when you said that when you were bringing up something that usually doesn't happen. I thought you were gonna go with or the Bears being in first. I thought that was a shot you were gonna take, but you did it.
No, I'm not going to be that mean because actually I had to point out something that wasn't obvious.
All right, so I got one more for you,
Okay.
and that's running backs. Would you
Okay.
rather have Chase Brown for the rest of the season or RJ Harvey, who now may have to be the starter for the rest of the year?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because I've not been a Jason Brown advocate. I've not been huge on him, but the last few weeks, Chase Brown has been living up to the hype that he was not living up to the first half of the season. RJ Harvey has hype. Is he going to live up to it? And he obviously had a really rough matchup against Kansas City because Kansas City's a rough matchup for running backs. Who? I'm gonna go. Oh, this hurts my soul. But I'm good. I'm gonna go Chase Brown. I'm gonna go Chase Brown. I think they're finally figuring out how to use him correctly without Joe Burrow there. And Joe Burrow was fully practicing this week. He could be back at any moment, y'all. And that just makes things better for Chase Brown. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth with that last one. They're using Chase Brown properly, and when Joe Burrow comes back, it's only going to help him. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I do like Harvey, but man, I love the J.K. Dobbins so much, and I just don't want to see anybody else succeed as well as he did in that spot.
That's fair. I get that. I feel bad for him, but at the
Yeah.
same time, this is the reality of J.K. Dobbins. Okay, next segment that we're going to dive into is called Steady and Safe. But before that, I do want to show you what do we do? How do we come up with this fantasy rankings report? How does it function? So right here, I need to Make the website a little wider so you can see it better. Okay, there we go. So right here is how we do our fantasy rankings as we go through and we take from 6 different websites, including Fantasy Now Plus, our own. Got to rep what we're doing right here. Okay. And we take their rankings and then we get a composite average of them. We also get the mode, the high, low, and the range for them. Because as you can see right here, JSN has a range of 1 because people are ranking him 1 and 2, rightfully so. But then you get down to Nico Collins, he's got a ranking of 6 through 16. And these are consensus 7. But if you are, if you're trying to weigh, I have a league where I have AJ Brown, Drake London, and Nico Collins. And let's say I only have 2 wide receiver spots open for a week because I've got 2 running back that can fit a flex or something. So if I have those top 16, wide receiver plays right there, who should I start? If I'm looking at NFL, tell me, kind of stay away from Nico and start AJ Brown. But if I'm looking across the board, it is definitely a huge difference between Nico Collins and AJ Brown. So that's where these consensus rankings come in. But also something like the mode helps us kind of see what the average is for somebody like Jerry Jeudy. While his rank is 40, he's most commonly ranked at 35. So we know that at least a couple people, if not more, agree that that's a sweet spot for him. So that is what we are using here on this show. Okay, you just roll a dice and that's where you rank them. That is Jamie's process. And Jamie and I have a Sunday morning start sit show. And now that concerns me even more because you are basing your rankings off of Monopoly dice. And that's not good. Okay. So let's talk about steady and safe. This is the part of the show where we each highlight 3 players in our positions of expertise that the consensus agrees upon. I'm going to start us off this week with wide receivers, as I'm the wide receiver expert. Michael's our running back expert. I don't think I initially stated that at the beginning. So just a refresher if I did. I'm going to start off with Mac Hollins, wide receiver 38, got a range of 5. Now, I want to remind you that we're going steady and safe based off of the consensus rankings. Sometimes we're going to agree with these personally, and sometimes we're not. However, I am definitely agreeing with Mac Hollins right here. He has had 49 or more yards in his last 4 out of 5 games. And his last 3 out of 4 games, he's had at least 5 targets. He's had 2 games where he's had 6 or 7 targets in the past 4 weeks. He's looking more and more consistent. Kayshon Boutte, we don't know if he's going to be back this week or not. And whether Boutte's been on the field or not, Hollins has still gotten some work. Has it helped that Boutte's not been out there? Absolutely. Plus, this week, they play the Cincinnati Bengals. That is a feast for somebody like Drake May and Mac Hollins to just make some plays across the middle of the field and just boom, make things happen. I genuinely believe that this is one of the safest players in the second half of the season right now when you're looking at flex plays. When you're looking at wide receiver 3 to flex plays, Mac Hollins is kind of what Khalil Shakir was last year. You just are going to start him no matter what.
Yeah, return of the Mac. I like it. My first guy I'm going to go with is Breece Hall. So he's RB16. His range is 6. Now, the ranges this week are kind of all over the place, so you're going to see a little bit of that today. Now, he's coming off a game where he didn't really have amazing fantasy stats, but rightfully so. They play New England, which New England is just ridiculous this year, especially in the rush with the rush defense. But he did have the most rushing yards by a running back this year versus them at 58. That's pretty good. There's
Yeah.
actually only 2 players that have more than him, and they're both quarterbacks. Josh Allen with 59, and then Justin Fields in that same game had 67. So
Oh,
running backs are not really doing anything against them this year.
no.
Now, Fields is not starting this next game. They already announced Tyrod Taylor is going to start in his place, going up against Baltimore, which realistically is going to give him more rushing opportunities now that Justin Fields isn't there to take a bunch of them. And Baltimore has been giving up 135 rushing yards at home per game this year. This is
Ooh.
going to be a chance for him to go off again. We might see the Brees Hall that, we're getting nice little spurts of here and there. He might show out this week. And I think he's a great steady and safe.
There you go. I like that. That's not somebody that I would feel steady and safe about. But the way you're talking, I like it. Next one is for me, Jawan Jennings at wide receiver 24 has a range of 4. He has had at least 4 receptions in his last 5 games. He's had at least 5 targets in his last 5 games, including some games with 7, 7, and 9 targets. In his last 2 games, he's eclipsed 50 yards. Eclipsed 50 yards. Brock Purdy is back at the helm, and that's just a different level of magic. Mac Jones did a great job, but you saw last week that the offense was just new levels of electric. Yes, is Ricky Pearsall back as well? Yes, he had like 1 catch for 12 yards last week, but he's got to get his feet going again. They're probably not playing him as hard because he's been injured a lot. Jawan Jennings has scored in the last 2 out of the 3 weeks, though. And this week they play Carolina, who has kind of been a surprisingly tougher matchup for people. As we're seeing, they're actually the 4th toughest matchup for wide receivers. So I don't trust the range of him being at wide receiver 24 without him getting a touchdown. But that's what the experts are saying. They have him within that range of 4, and the consensus ranking is 24. I feel steady and safe with him, maybe as a flex, but definitely not as a wide receiver 2, where he's ranked right now.
Yeah, for sure. My next guy, I'm going with one that confused me a little, if I'm being honest. That's Jaylen Warren at RB19, and he's got pretty small range. It's at 4, which is one of the better ranges when you're looking at anything below RB1 tier. But the interesting thing is that he's that high, and he left the game with injury last week. Yeah, he managed to put up 62 yards, but that was versus the Bengals. I probably could too as well. But he also didn't practice today, which is interesting that he's going that high. But Steelers are saying they're not concerned about it, and they're expecting him to play even if he's not going to be at 100%, which is probably a good game for him to play at not 100%. It's against the Bears. For as well as the Bears are doing, they are still hurting in the rush defense. They're giving up about 133.3 yards a game. Running backs are doing well, very well versus them. Now, Aaron Rodgers is expected to play, but he does have a slightly broken wrist on his non-throwing hand. And at that point, whether Rodgers plays or not, I'm assuming Warren will be able to get a bunch of touches if he plays. Rodgers might baby that wrist a little bit. What is he going to do? Hand it off to Warren. If it's going to be Rudolph, then I don't expect Rudolph to be able to feast on the Bears defense. They have the top 3 interception leaders in the league right now.
Which is insane.
Yeah, with Nashawn Wright being 3rd, and he wasn't even supposed to really see the field this year. I mean, I love it. But now he's not a guy that I'm going to say go ahead and throw in there as a steady and safe. But consensus right now, he's up there. They think he looks good. If he plays, he'll probably still get a pretty decent amount of yards. Like you said with your last one, it might just be a good flex spot if you're in a pinch, but consensus has them as a steady and safe.
Yeah, I like your logic on that. I do. I like it a lot. My third steady and safe, and my last steady and safe wide receiver is Josh Downs of the Indianapolis Colts at wide receiver 41. He's only got a range of 3, which is pretty darn small. Now, Josh Downs has been kind of an up and down character throughout the season. However, in the last 3 out of 4 games that he has played, he has scored a touchdown. Daniel Jones is getting him the ball toward the end zone. He has had 2 of those games where he had 9 and 7 targets. He's had 3 out of his last 5 games with 6 receptions in each of those games. He also is not getting the high yardage that some people might think he was going to. I've been honking the horn for Alec Pierce all year, and he's getting the yardage. He's getting all that. Josh Downs only has 3 games this year above 43 yards. So if he does not come away with a touchdown, you could have a dud week like he did last week, where he played under 50% of snaps, had 2 targets, 1 reception for 3 yards. The week before, though, he played 67% of snaps, had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. That's the kind of variance you're going to get with Josh Downs. And so I don't love it as steady and safe, but I think he is, depending on who you need to play because of bye weeks and stuff. I think Josh Downs could be a viable play, but I wouldn't bank on him.
For sure.
And Jamie says, I've also been honking the horn for him. That's only because I told you to. I don't know. Maybe not. I'm just giving you crap.
My next guy is going to be probably the lowest I've gone on my tier list with a steady and safe guy.
Ooh.
That's because at RB3 tier, he's got a range of 2, which is extremely rare in running backs this year. And that's Tyrone Tracy Jr., who I've been hoping was going to do something all year. Now, he hasn't really been doing it, but he did look good last week. So Tyrone Tracy is RB28. His range is 2. Like I said, he's in the RB3 tier, which is, he was actually borderline bottom RB2 versus RB3. But he finally had that game that I thought he would do many times this year. He had 88 rushing yards, 4 receptions for 51 yards. And he did that versus the Packers, which almost week in, week out, I'm saying, avoid the Packers with your running back. Avoid the Packers with your running back. They've been easing up a little bit. Still nothing too crazy. They're still one of the better rush defenses in the league. But doing that against the Packers is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
They're 7th in rushing yards given up per game. And the next team he faces, they're a top 8 rushing defense. That's Detroit. Now, Detroit has looked pretty good. If he can do this back-to-back weeks against a top 10 rush defense, he's really going to want to move up further on my list. Now, Barkley had a pretty good game against them last week, but that's Saquon. He had 83. He had 83 rushing yards versus them. But that's actually one of Barkley's better rushing games this year. He's only had, I think, 3 games above 80. And this one was against a top 10 defense. Now, I'm not expecting Tracy to do that by any means, but right now the consensus has him as a pretty viable flex back end kind of guy. I personally would try to avoid him this week, but consensus loves him.
Yeah, it's again all comes down to bye weeks and injuries. So I can see you wanting to avoid him, especially against the Detroit Lions. But he also is somebody that I think you can kind of bookmark for future weeks. I think bringing him up right now is a good thing for him. Maybe not this week, but maybe you see a downfall in him. Maybe somebody drops him because they're like, oh, he had one good week and then he struggled a little bit. stash them yourself, see what happens. The main part of our show is here, experts against experts. This is the part of the show where we each highlight 5 players in our positions of expertise that the consensus disagrees on. We will talk about one from each tier. For example, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, 3, 4, and 5. We have these tiers in groups of 12. So wide receiver 1 through 12 is in the wide receiver 1 tier. 13 through 24, wide receiver 2 tier. Same thing with the running backs. I will start us off with our wide receiver 1 tier. That is NFC North juggernaut Justin Jefferson. He's ranked at wide receiver 12 this week. He's got a range of 5. So, with the range of 5, his highest ranking is 9, and his lowest ranking is 14. However, even though he's ranked as wide receiver 12 right now, he's in our wide receiver 1 tier. He is wide receiver 18 in fantasy points per game this season. Wide receiver 30 in fantasy points per game in the last 4 weeks. Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers, who's only played 4 weeks this season, is higher in fantasy points per game than Justin Jefferson. And I'm not saying that as a brag as the Packers. That is a crap. What is going on with Justin Jefferson? Because that should not be happening. Christian Watson should not be outscoring Justin Jefferson. In weeks 3 through 8 with Carson Wentz at the helm, Justin Jefferson had 74 plus yards in each game. Pretty much 75, but there's one game with 74. In other weeks, without Wentz at the helm, with 9 at the helm, only 2 weeks above 50 yards. Here's what his season stats look like when it comes to target share, air yards, and end zone target share. He's a 32% target share, which is expected for a dominant force like him, 41% air yards, and he's got 35% of the Vikings' end zone target share. Those are all great top statistics. They're going up against the Green Bay Packers. Yes, I'm a Packers fan, but I'm talking about this logistically from a fantasy angle. The Packers are the 11th worst wide receiver for matchups right now. Since facing the Bengals and Jamar Chase in week 6, the Packers have not given up more than 5 receptions to a wide receiver in a game or 75 yards. No one has gotten more than 75. They've all been under 75 yards since week 7 against this Packers defense. They've only allowed 3 wide receiver touchdowns in this time as well. Something you also need to consider when you're looking at wide receiver matchups is their quarterback matchups. Packers are the 7th worst quarterback matchups. So they're bad for wide receivers. They're even worse for quarterbacks, allowing the 7th least amount of passing yards per game at only 208.9 yards a game. That is low. That's really low. JJ McCarthy has exceeded 160 yards once this year. He has 6 targets and 8 interceptions in 5 games. Things are not going well for Justin Jefferson. There's also been some blatant plays that you just kind of feel him give up. He is not playing at the dominant, I'm the best wide receiver in the league level right now. And I think his quarterback has to do with it. He's not getting the superstar treatment, which he should be. He's scary. I don't like him being on the Vikings. I don't like him being in my team's division. He's such a joy to watch, and this year he's not, and that's reflective in the fantasy statistics as well. I think Justin Jefferson is somebody you have to keep an eye out for. Not saying that you bench him, but as I was alluding to earlier, you have a stacked wide receiver core, or you've got a few guys and you have to sit one of them. Justin Jefferson this week might be that guy that if you've got a heavy team with a light lineup, he might be your bench guy, which is insane. I don't like it. It feels icky. It feels gross. But that's the reality of where he is right now.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he also made a comment about last week, maybe about a week and a half ago, about him watching highlights of himself and just realizing he's kind of a shell of himself right now.
Yeah, he said yesterday via Rotoballer, he said as a team, as a captain, as a leader of this team, I have to be the first one out there. I have to be head first, leading us in the direction of winning, of being where we need to be. He's now saying this turnaround has to start off with me. So he's aware of this, which is really important. But we've seen greats be on horrible teams. Look at Larry Fitzgerald's career. Just look at his career, or LaDainian Tomlinson's career. You have these these once in a lifetime players that come across, and you can't win by being the best skill player on the field. You've got to have that connection with the quarterback. And it's just not there right now. I feel for him. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, absolutely. My first guy, RB1 tier, I'm going James Cook. He's at RB10. And when I was mentioning earlier, the ranges are a little crazy this week. We have a couple guys that actually have a fairly large range in the RB1 tier, and James Cook is one of them. His range goes from 5 to 14.
Ooh.
Which is pretty weird for how well he's been doing.
Yeah.
Last week, Josh Allen decided he was just going to do it all. He decided to pass for 3 touchdowns, rush for 3 touchdowns.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, if he could do it, go for it. But Cook still kind of ran away with almost 20 and a half points in PPR last week, even though he wasn't really getting all the rushing yards he normally does. What he did do was he took advantage of Josh Allen wanting to throw that ball a lot as well. And he ended up with 66 receiving yards on 3 receptions and a touchdown. So that really helped him out to get his fantasy points. So if he's not getting it running, he's getting it receiving. Now, I really want to see what he can do against a top 3 rush defense. They have Houston next. Houston's rush defense, phenomenal right now. And the last time he faced a rush defense this good, this season at least, was in week 5 against the Patriots, who I already mentioned are just ridiculous. And that was kind of his worst game of the year. He only had 49 rushing yards on 15 attempts, no catches on 1 target, and he finished as RB41. The only other week that even came close to that, I think he finished like RB25. So it wasn't even close as far as his worst games go. Obviously, you start James Cook every week. That's a no-brainer. But the only thing that really makes it different for me this week is he's kind of looking more like a back-end RB1 start rather than front of the line absolutely going. If you don't know who you're playing James Cook. Obviously, you're still playing him, but he's looking more of an RB2 kind of guy this week, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that James Cook hasn't he been a little hit or miss lately? He hasn't been as dominant as he once was, right?
Yeah, pulling his game log up now.
And the Texans run defense. That's a great defense for that team, not to play against though. So, yeah. What does this game log say?
Yeah, week 5 and 6, not great. Week 5 ended up with less than 5 fantasy points, 49 yards. Rushed well against Atlanta, had 87 yards, but that's it. So less than 10 points there. But then bye week went off against a great Carolina rush defense. That was a 216-yard game. Followed it up with 113 versus KC, but then 53 versus Miami, 48 versus Tampa Bay.
Yeah. So it has not been as strong as you want it to be. Not at all. So we both talked about wide receiver and running back tier 1 people that aren't as strong as we want them to be. However, my wide receiver 2 tier guy is stronger than a wide receiver 2. Let's talk about George Pickens at wide receiver 14. He's got a range of 9. His highest ranking is 9. His lowest is 18. Something I did this week, and I didn't realize it until I was done listing all my wide receivers that I chose this week. I've not talked about any of these wide receivers in the main part of the show, the experts against the experts. So they've either been off the radar or had some very easy consensus meetings that I haven't had to talk about them. So it's fun. We're getting into week 12 and I'm talking about a whole new slate of guys and not having to worry about that I don't talk about Alec Pierce again. George Pickens is wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game this season and wide receiver 8 in fantasy points per game in the last 4 weeks. Since week 4, George Pickens has had 75 plus yards in all games besides one. He has 7 touchdowns on the season. However, he scored 5 out of 7 of those in weeks 3 through 6 when CeeDee Lamb was gone. He's got a 23% target share for a wide receiver 2 on a team. That's great. 36% of the air yards and a 40% end zone target share on the season. But since week 7, it's only been a 20% end zone target share, which is when CeeDee Lamb came back. So CeeDee Lamb cut his end zone targets in half, which makes sense because it's CeeDee freaking Lamb. The Eagles, his opponent this week, are the 12th worst wide receiver matchup in the league. So they're almost in that middle, kind of upper middling group right there. They have allowed 8 wide receivers 75 plus or more yards this season, which he has eclipsed in his last 6 out of 7 games. So that's a good thing to look at. However, the Eagles have only allowed 2 touchdowns since week 5. Since week 5, that's that's a good chunk of time to not allow wide receivers to have touchdowns. And George Pickens is not getting a whole lot of touchdowns with Lamb on the field, even though last week he did get 144 yards and a touchdown, but that was also against the Las Vegas Raiders, not the Philadelphia Eagles. Hi, Susan. Real quick, camera people. My neediest little girl. Yeah. Frank, be quiet. Okay. So now that I'm back, I do want to talk about what happened when you have 2 really good wide receivers facing the Philadelphia Eagles, because this matters. Week 1, CeeDee Lamb super outplayed George Pickens. However, the last 2 top tier combos that they've played are Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, and then Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And that has both happened after week 5 when they've only allowed 2 touchdowns since then. Jordan Addison, 9 receptions for 128 yards, while Justin Jefferson had 5 receptions for 79 yards. Nothing to scoff at either way, but Jordan Addison, being the wide receiver 2, outproduced. Then if you look at last week, Jameson Williams had 4 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Amon-Ra was shut down with 2 receptions for 42 yards. They're shutting down these wide receiver 1s pretty darn well. And then the wide receiver 2 guys, if they had the steam for it, because like week 8, they played Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton, and they shut down both of them because that's not a wide receiver tandem that you're scared of. But when you have 2 very talented wide receivers, the wide receiver 2 is scoring more against the Eagles. So this is George Pickens' week to continue to keep himself in the top 10 wide receiver statistical categories, let alone the conversation of it.
That's a very interesting tidbit. I like that a lot. The whole wide receiver 2 thing really
Right?
is really cool, actually. And yeah, Pickens had a hell of a game for a guy that got punished for missing curfew.
Well,
That's
Lamb did too. They were
yeah,
both out on that first drive.
yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, my RB2 tier guy, this one's for you. It's a guy that made himself up to RB21. That's Emmanuel Wilson. He's
Ooh.
got a fairly big range 14 to 29 for in the RB2 tier, but he's up there now. And that's because Josh Jacobs left with a knee injury last week.
Mhm.
And with him missing that time, Wilson ended up taking about 71% of the snap share and looked pretty decent. He ended up with 11 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown, which was his first of the year. Had a reception for 9 yards. Now, what does that actually mean now, though? How long is Josh Jacobs out? Not sure. It doesn't sound like he'll be playing in the next maybe week or so. Not 100% sure if he will or not. They're kind of not really giving too much information just yet, but it's never really a good time to have your stud running back out. But right now, it's not really,
No.
yeah, it's not
He
really the
didn't
worst.
practice today.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, they did say there's a very slim chance that he plays. Like it's pretty much that he's out.
Yeah, it's very likely that he's gonna miss one game.
Yeah, and if there's going to be a game he's going to miss, it's not the worst one to miss. They face Minnesota next, who's giving up about 127 rushing yards a game.
And it's at home.
Yeah, and it's at home, and I believe it's the Vikings are slightly worse. They're giving about 132 rushing yards as the away team. Now, honestly, I would probably consider Wilson here as a good flex option. Now, anybody that really has major injuries going on, you got the bye weeks going on, this is a good spot for Wilson to really show off. Next week, I'm not 100% sure who they face. I want to say it's a
They play
better
Detroit. They
Detroit.
play
That's right.
Detroit. Yeah.
And
In
then
at Ford Field.
that one would be a little rough.
Yeah.
And then once you get past that, if Josh Jacobs is still out and Wilson has to start, they play the Bears.
Yeah.
So 2 of the next 3 weeks is a really good spot for him if he has to start for an extended period of time. I don't wanna say it, but I do like Wilson as a flex option if you need him right now.
Yes. I agree. I think that's a good call. Which is kind of weird to say, but we've seen some backup running backs do some great things this season. And Emmanuel Wilson he's been proving it. He's been getting some more snaps this year, seeing this field more because he's good. He's good. Um, Wide receiver 3 tier for me. Sticking with the Green Bay Packers theme, let's talk about Christian Watson. Wide receiver 28. He's got a range of 13. So his highest ranking is 25 and his lowest ranking is 38. He's 27th. He's wide receiver 27 in fantasy points per game. And same thing, wide receiver 27th in fantasy points per game in the last 4 weeks because he's only played 4 weeks. He's had 4 or 5 targets in each of his games. And last week, his yards per catch dropped below 21 yards for the first time all season. And it was still over 11 yards per catch. So nothing horrible, but he had been at 21 or higher in yards per catch. He is being targeted downfield every game. Not even if it's like maybe 15, 20 yards, he's getting some chunk plays. Sometimes he's getting targeted for the bomb, and they also have Matthew Golden, who can also be targeted for the bomb. So it kind of gives the Packers this kind of dual threat, which is fun. Since he's been in, he's got a 14% target share, which is nothing great. You want to see that go up for him, and hopefully it will. But you never know. He does, however, have a 37% air yard share, which is higher than George Pickens' air yard share. He's got a 40% end zone target share, which is the same as George Pickens. So 2 out of the 3 categories he's higher than George Pickens in. And then you flip his numbers back and forth, and he's the same. You switch his end zone target share and air yards, and he's pretty much the same as Justin Jefferson in those categories, which is very good. Christian Watson was drafted to be an elite wide receiver. They traded up for him to get that. And he has not always proven that, but he's had moments where you just go, oh, that was sweet. Oh, that's really nice. And with his 2 touchdowns last week, you're kind of like, oh, okay, Tucker Kraft is out. We don't know when Jaden Reed's going to be back. Matthew Golden's taking a little bit of time to catch up. Christian Watson is clearly their big guy, their big play guy. Vikings, however, are the 7th worst wide receiver for matchups. Since their week 7 dissemination by the Eagles wide receiver tandem that had over 300 yards against them combined, only 4 wide receivers have gotten 65 plus yards, and they've only given up 3 touchdowns since then, and none in the past 2 games. So that's something to look at. Christian Watson, however, has only had 1 game above 60 yards so far this year. So you're not looking for him to be crazy good, but he's ranked wide receiver 28, and his fantasy points per game is 27th on the season. Very adequately ranked, even though his range is crazy. He should be a wide receiver 2, 3 high flex play for you. He should be starting for you even against this Vikings secondary, because with Josh Jacobs out now, they're going to have to pass the ball more. And Christian Watson will be the number 1 guy that has to continue to step up in that.
Yeah, awesome. So my next guy is, if I'm being honest, is a guy that I've been kind of ignoring almost all year. My RB3 tier guy is Kareem Hunt. Now, I know I've mentioned him other episodes, but it was really mostly just like, meh, Kareem Hunt's here. He's listed as RB27, but his range is absolutely ridiculous. He has a range of 25, 22 to 47. And
wow.
If you look at his numbers, he has been very serviceable since week 8. He's getting double-digit points each week. This last week, he rushed for 59 yards and a touchdown versus Denver. And Denver's rush defense is fantastic. So that's pretty good for a guy that, in my opinion, I thought was, I don't want to say done, but when you get up to in your 30s as a running back, if you really start noticing the slowing down. And next, he's got the Colts, who borderline top 10 rush defense as well. So this would be another good test for him. But honestly, the way he's been playing recently, if you're in a bind, this is a potentially good flex pick for him. Now, again, I want to reiterate, they're playing the Colts, who are a borderline top 5 rush defense.
Yeah.
But he's been doing it against pretty good defenses. I would consider him this week, actually, for a flex spot if you're looking at some bye weeks and some injuries on your team. And honestly, I thought he was done.
Yeah. I thought he was too. However, it's crazy. And hey, Pacheco, if he's not back this week, you have to start Kareem Hunt. They have to have some semblance of a running game, and Kareem Hunt is that semblance of a running game. Maybe sometime they'll draft an actual running back, but right now, Kareem Hunt, I mean, it's kind of working for them. Their running game is not the reason that they are 5-5 right now. My wide receiver 4 tier is rookie wide receiver Jaden Higgins of the Houston Texans. He's wide receiver 44, and he's got a range of 12. Wide receiver 42 to 54. Overall in the season, he's wide receiver 76 in fantasy points per game. And you're like, how is he wide receiver 44? Ranked up there. Because in the last 4 weeks, this is why recency bias sometimes does help. Also, Jamie got to go. Bye, lover boy. See you on Sunday. He's been wide receiver 40 again in fantasy points per game in the last 4 weeks. He's had a 10% target share, 15% air yards, and 24% end zone target share throughout the season. Now, over the last 4 weeks, all of those have gone up. 14% target share, 21% air yard share, 36% end zone target share. That's great. Over the last 4 weeks, he has had 7+ targets in 3 out of 4 games. He only had 1 target against Denver, but they also lost CJ Stroud, and Davis Mills got thrown into that game. The Buffalo Bills are the 13th worst wide receiver matchup for wide receivers. So that's kind of right in the middle of the league. You know, upper half, but still middle of the league. After giving up 6 touchdowns to wide receivers in the first 6 weeks, they've only given up 2 since week 7. So they're not giving up that many to the wide receiver. However, they have given up 4 70-yard plus wide receiver performances in the past 4 weeks. So they are getting a little loose on the yardage, a little tighter on the end zone coverage. However, Jaden Higgins is kind of becoming a end zone threat with Davis Mills at the helm. Something you do have to talk about, just like we talked about when it came to J.J. McCarthy, is that the Bills are the 4th worst fantasy matchup for quarterbacks, and Davis Mills being a backup might not be the safest bet on the face of the planet. He's had really good games these past 2 weeks, playing against the Titans, who are 13th best matchup for quarterback, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are the 5th best matchup for quarterback, even after what they did to Justin Herbert. That is still put into that. So the Bills have some passing game stop power. I like Jaden Higgins. I don't know if I like him this week. I can see why his range is so big. There might be some flex plays that I play instead of him, just kind of looking at the wide receivers around him. I might play Xavier Legette ahead of him. Andre Yoshivash ahead of him. Luther Burden might play him ahead of him. Probably wouldn't play Josh Downs ahead of him or Cooper Kupp or Greg Dortch. Maybe Greg Dortch, probably not though. So there's some flexibility with that.
Yeah, that hurting that Jacksonville put on Chargers was a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
And kind of going to talk about that next as well. My RB4 tier guy, Bayshaw Tootin, RB 39. Another guy with a ridiculous range, 31 to 54, range of 23. Many, including myself, were kind of excited to see what he can do coming into this year. Fortunately, he was only averaging about 22% of snap counts this year, which kind of expected, but also was kind of expecting a little bit more than that. But his highest share came this past week at 32% versus the Chargers, and he made the most of it. He had 15 attempts, which is actually his only game that he's had double-digit attempts in this year. And he had 4.9 yards per carry. You know, finished with 74 yards and a touchdown. I would love to see him be able to do something like that again, to be able to get a lot of looks again this week, because they're going up against Arizona. And I don't know that Arizona is going to be able to do anything this week. They got, I believe Marvin Harrison's out. I don't care who's at quarterback. Their starter is not even good to begin with. I want Jacksonville to literally run all over Arizona, and I want Tootin to be able to be out there and do it. And like I said, Arizona is struggling. They've been struggling on their rush defense over the past 3 weeks, especially. They're giving up 138.7 yards in the last three
Wow.
games. If they give Tootin a shot this week again, I will love it. He is a guy that I don't know if you start him at flex though, but he is a guy that, man, you might consider it. Against this Arizona defense, both running backs might have a good shot to put up some fantasy points.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good call right there. That yeah. Tootin has been somebody that people talk about a lot, and he has his moments, and then he goes away in those moments. And hopefully, this is a time where he can continue to shine in the light that he was given. Okay, my last one, wide receiver 5 tier, Calvin Austin III of the Pittsburgh Steelers, currently ranked wide receiver 53. He's got a range of 11, highest ranking 45, lowest ranking 56. He is currently wide receiver 68 in fantasy points per game. However, in the last 4 weeks, wide receiver 86. So he went from 68 to 86. Don't like it. Here's what he's had on the season: 16% target share, 29% air yards, and 50% end zone target share. For somebody that's kind of a wide receiver 2-3 guy, not too bad. Last 4 weeks, however, 16% target share hasn't changed. 20% air yard share went down by 9%. 0% end zone target share went down 15%. However, he has had 6 targets in his last 3 out of 4 games. And the Chicago Bears are the 5th best wide receiver matchup. They give up the second highest amount of touchdowns per game to the wide receiver position in the league, and they've given up 8 50-plus yard performances to the wide receiver position in just the last 4 weeks. So I feel like no matter if Aaron Rodgers is playing or not, the Bears offense is going to give the Steelers a tough enough time that they can't just rely on running the ball. Calvin Austin could come in and give you some simple flat line 7-8 PPR points that could help you in a bye week or an injury riddled team during a bye week. He's not something I'm going out and shopping for or purposely starting on a healthy team without buys. But I am going to play him over some other people that are on my bench.
For sure. I like that because I picked him up in Dynasty. I drafted him in the rookie draft back in 23, whatever it was. And I know they say it's better to be early than late, but I'm just not ready to give up on the guy, man. He's gonna do something eventually. Now,
Yeah.
my RB5 tier, it's a week in, week out. It's a bunch of RB5 tier, RB6 tier is a bunch of who are you guys kind of thing. And it's always really hard to pick someone there.
Yeah.
And so I was just digging around, just looking around, like what's going on with these running backs this year. So I'm not going to concentrate on a guy this week. It's really just going to be what the hell's going on. And I have a question for you.
Okay.
How many running backs do you think are currently listed as injured? That's questionable or worse.
Are we going, is this starting running backs or running backs overall?
Just running backs overall.
I'm going to go 21.
Fair. It's 30. There's actually more running backs on IR than that 21. There's 26 running backs on the injured reserve at this moment. There's one that's suspended. There's one on PUP. There's about 13 that are questionable. The Chargers have 3 of those running backs on IR.
Oh.
And Kamani Vidal left early last week with a thigh injury.
Oh.
I don't know what is going on this year, but this is hurting so bad. I don't know what Vidal seems like he's going to play. He left the game early, didn't come back last week. I really don't know what they're going to really do for this week, next week. It's looking like Vidal's going to play, but what do you do in this situation? Like, this is probably the most ridiculous fantasy year that I've ever seen in the running back rooms.
I say that you play wide receivers in flex or tight ends. Yeah. I've got some leagues where I am literally playing 2 or 3 tight ends, whether they have a premium or not, because of the amount of injuries that I have. Also, I like to be a tight end whisperer sometimes. So I drafted AJ Barner up the wazoo this year. I just knew that he was going to be somebody that I could trust. So him being my tight end 2 and Noah Fant being my tight end 3 on a lot of my teams, I can trust them a little bit more than, picking up, Raheem Mostert or something like that. Like, it's not the best way, but welcome to fantasy football. Welcome to how the cookie crumbles, y'all. That's how this goes. We do have a quick question. JMO or K9 at flex full PPR? K9, Kenneth Walker, right?
That's what I'm assuming.
Okay.
Is he number 9?
I think K9. I don't know. Yep, Kenneth Walker. Okay. I'm going JMO. I think that since Sam Laporta is out, that they're giving JMO opportunity now. He looks great. Kenneth Walker is not going to see the end zone, really. Zach Charbonnet is their goal line back. JMO has a better opportunity for that. That's where I'm going for that. Michael?
Full agree. Yeah. Charbonnet is taking everything away from him. And unless you absolutely have to play him, then go for it. But yeah, otherwise, I avoid Kenneth Walker.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for asking. So K9 versus the Titans, very juicy. Mike McDonald was hitting at his increase in workload. I don't like hints. That's just my thought. I think at the beginning of the year, the first half of the year, I wouldn't have said JMO at all. But the way that they're actually using JMO, plus Dan Campbell's taking play calling over, and ever since that has happened, JMO is a different player. I trust that more than I trust the Kenneth Walker Zach Charbonnet split. So I can see how it's a juicy matchup, but I don't see him breaking something big. However, JMO, I think he could and probably will. So thank you, everybody, for listening, watching, consuming this podcast, however you are. Michael, do you have anything to say before we sign off?
No, I want to echo that. Just thanks to everyone for joining in, asking some questions, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Okay, deuces.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for more ways to win your league.